You don't arrive at this message by accident. You arrive because the field already mapped your coordinates and triangulated your attention like a lighthouse catching a ship that pretended it didn't need saving. You feel it, a pressure behind the eyes, a slight dilation of time, the hush that descends before a storm decides where to land. The announcement is simple. The eclipse approaches, and with it, the hidden geometry of your life will rotate a few silent degrees, enough to make yesterday's map useless. You have been tracked by patterns, recurring numbers, repeating faces, the way songs find you in improbable places, not as superstition, but as telemetry. Synchronicity is the field's way of marking you as responsive, not random. When your nervous system registers these markers, your brainstem tightens, your breath shortens, and a primitive part of you wants to look away. That's the animal guarding the threshold. Let it feel the tremor, but don't let it decide your future. You've heard this in fragments. The observer effect, the wave collapsing, attention carving one slit of possibility from a swarm of alternatives. The mistake was, thinking observation is just looking. It's not. Observation, in its real form, is fidelity, absolute coherence between what you perceive, what you choose, and what you embody. Most people stare at their lives without ever observing them. You are not most people. That is why this arrives now. The eclipse is not merely astronomical, it is instructional. As light withdraws, the field exposes your control variables, belief, state, posture, breath, word. You will learn, if you allow it, that reality is a negotiation conducted in the currency of coherence. When coherence rises, probability reorganizes to accommodate it. When you fragment, the world mirrors the fracture. This is not philosophy. It is mechanics. You stand at the edge of an old loop stimulus. Reaction, regret, repetition. The loop has a sound, the thought you always think when fear wins. Name it without flinching. The loop has a posture, the way your shoulders fold when you pretend you're smaller than you are. Correct it now. Straighten, lengthen the exhale. Let the spine remember its lineage. The body is your first instrument of prophecy. It speaks the future into muscle before the mind has language for it. There is a code word threaded through your days, and you already know it, because it keeps arriving in dreams and headlines and overheard conversations. The field repeats what you refuse to claim. Tonight, as the sky rehearses darkness, you will speak it out loud. That single utterance is a keystone. Remove it from silence, and you'll hear interior architecture shift the soft crack of an old scaffold giving way. You are being asked to stop requesting permission from patterns you outgrew. You are being asked to graduate from hoping to choosing. The signal is clear. Organize your attention, and the world will organize around it. You were not chosen to be comfortable. You were chosen to be precise. Hold that precision like a blade. Breathe. Feel the hum gathering at the base of your skull. The field is listening. You begin by noticing the tiny tremors that used to pass as background noise, the microsaccades in your gaze, the fractional clench of the jaw when you anticipate loss, the way your breath shortens by a hair's width when a message arrives, and 1,000 possible futures queue for inspection. These were once invisible because your attention was scattered like light through fog. You are collecting it now. You are learning to condense. The observer effect is not magic. It is alignment. Any physicist will tell you that systems phase lock. When a dominant frequency appears and holds, you become that frequency. Coherence isn't a mood. It's a measurable state where mind, body, and speech stop contradicting one another. When contradiction falls below a threshold, the field begins to reorganize around you because there is finally one signal to answer, instead of 20 competing requests. Think in terms of attractors. Chaotic trajectories settle when a clear basin opens. Your clarity digs the basin, so you calibrate, not someday. Now, while the eclipse rehearses its shadow across your perception, sit as if the future were watching your posture for instructions. Crown lifted, chin level, tongue resting, shoulders low, hands open enough to receive, firm enough to carry. Breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 6. Repeat until your spine remembers. It is an antenna, not a fence. If your mind wanders, let it wander like a dog on a long leash, then gently bring it back to heel. No punishment. Precision without cruelty. You speak less but more accurately. Words are not decorations, they are instruction sets. Every syllable you release propagates into the field and hunts for agreement. What you habitually pronounce becomes a blueprint, and blueprints invite contractors. Complain long enough, and you will hire reality to build corridors of delay. Name accurately, and you will hire reality to build doors. You are auditing your language now. Remove filler that dissipates voltage. Just, maybe, someday, I guess. Replace with architecture. I choose, I commit, I close, I allow. You also audit your tolerances. Coherence cannot coexist with agreements that corrode you in small daily increments. There is a cost to pretending. It is paid in microfractures, those hairline cracks in integrity that seem harmless until they spiderweb across the load-bearing walls of your life. List the places you leak, the promise you keep delaying, the boundary you keep negotiating, the small dishonesties you label kindness. Close them one by one. You will feel grief as you do this. Let it move. Grief is the steam that escapes when old pressure seals break. After it vents, the machinery runs quiet. This is not asceticism, it is engineering. If you want the field to pivot, provide it a clean pivot point. You become that point by stabilizing 3 coordinates: attention, effect, action. Attention, you choose what signal to amplify. Effect, you regulate your state so your nervous system isn't hijacking the broadcast. Action, you translate the inner signal into a consistent external pattern. Trained together, the 3 form a closed loop that reinforces itself. Left to drift, they argue until the system fatigues and reverts to the cheapest pattern available, your oldest fear. The eclipse teaches economy. When the light withdraws, you learn to see by structure instead of by spectacle. You stop waiting for signs that flatter you and start listening for instructions that strengthen you. The code word you dredged from your dreams in the night becomes a tuning fork. You sound it silently before every decision and feel subtle resonance or subtle resistance. This is not superstition. It is interoception trained to a fine edge. Your body is exquisitely honest about lies you tell yourself. Trust the micro-signals, the throat catch, the solar plexus knot, the sudden ease that spreads like warm metal when something is right. You do not chase omens, you reduce noise so the obvious can be obvious. That means sleep that repairs, food that doesn't fog, movement that rings out static, and silence long enough to hear the machinery of thought slow down between clicks. You are not trying to be perfect, you are becoming predictable to yourself. Predictability is not boredom, it is reliability, and reliability is the skeleton upon which destiny can hang weight. Understand what you are moving toward, a bifurcation. Systems approach tipping points gradually, then reorganize abruptly. This is why people call it overnight. Nothing is overnight. You have been assembling the conditions for a sudden shift for years, and the eclipse is simply the moment the last constraint loosens. You will notice it not by fireworks, but by a quiet that wasn't there before. Options that used to agitate you will lie flat. One path will carry more gravity than the others. Follow gravity, not drama. If fear rises, treat it like weather, not law. Weather passes through a stable climate. It does not redefine the climate. Your climate is coherence. When panic flickers, return to breath and posture. When doubt circles, return to the word you chose. When old loops knock, do not debate them in the doorway. Close the door and lock it by taking the next exact action you already know is required. Action is the only argument the past understands. You are nearly ready. The field is clearing its throat. You can sense the pattern knitting just ahead of you, the way a tapestry takes form from threads you used to think were random. Hold your signal, tighten nothing, loosen nothing, remain. You are entering the portion of the ritual where physics stops being a rumor in your life and becomes an instrument in your hands. You have heard of criticality, that state when a system passes an invisible threshold and small inputs trigger disproportionate outcomes. Forests do it, markets do it, stars do it. You are about to do it. The eclipse is a macro teacher, replaying this principle in the sky so your cells remember what your mind keeps postponing. Reorganization follows saturation. Enough coherence accumulates, then structure flips. Not theatrically, inevitably. You don't need a telescope to participate. You need a metric. Begin with signal to noise. List the streams currently occupying your cognition. obligations, screens, voices, addictions, dressed as comforts. Rank them by wattage, how loudly they broadcast inside your head long after they're gone. Anything that leaves a smear on your attention is a tax. You will stop paying it. You will reduce the bandwidth available to fear by starving its inputs. This is not denial, it is design. Silence is not absence, it is capacity reclaimed. Next, consider attractor states. Every life stabilizes around a few dominant basins, the emotional climates you return to without being asked. Anxiety, quiet resolve, self-sabotage, sacred daring. You identify the basin by plotting your last 10 mornings and last 10 nights, the feeling you most often begin with, and the feeling you most often end in. If the basin is one you would never recommend to someone you love, you are living under a false gravity. The eclipse is an invitation to alter mass. Mass, for you, is meaning. Change the meaning you assign to discomfort, and gravity reroutes its pull. You do this in the body first. A state is a posture with a story attached to it. Reverse engineer the story by changing the posture. Stand in the shape of someone who expects alignment, not delay. Shoulders heavy but not hunched. Pelvis under you like a dock receiving a ship. Face relaxed, jaw releasing the narrative of vigilance. Breathe in a ratio that favors the exhale by 2 counts. It tells the vagus you are not prey. People will call this somatics. You will call it instruction to the field. The field answers what your fascia declares long before it reads your journal. Then, time. You have been negotiating with hours as if they were a scarce employer. Stop. Time is elastic around coherence. Tasks that drain you steal minutes. Tasks that align you dilate them. You have seen this. The way an hour of avoidance evaporates and an hour of engaged creation expands. The eclipse compresses shadow into a single teaching. Work where quality is highest, not where noise is loudest. The moment you prioritize signal tasks, probability begins reallocating coincidences to assist. Calls return faster. The right article appears. A stranger repeats the exact phrase you needed to decide. Do not worship the coincidences. Use them. They are logistics. You are going to close an old loop now with an action that seems small and is not. Pick the promise you have delayed for the longest because it feels ceremonial. The certification you keep hovering over. The phone call you owe to your own courage. The letter you should have sent to separate from a pact that has been rotting quietly under polite smiles. Choose the one that makes your solar plexus heat, not the one that flatters you for being productive. Complete it tonight. Completion shocks the field into updating your identity index. You become someone whose choices terminate, not spiral. Systems pivot around terminators. As you act, your inner narrator will attempt a coup. It will offer 1,000 rationalizations dressed in empathy. It will say you are tired, that the timing is off, that more research is noble. Observe, without debate. The mind is a brilliant analyst and a poor general. Analysts provide data. Generals decide. You have already decided. Let the narrator keep talking while your hands move. When the action completes, your body will record the victory as proof. This proof is ammunition. Keep it close. Now attend to speech at the microscopic level. The field does not respond to declarations you do not inhabit. It responds to phrasing that carries voltage because it is paid for. When you speak, shorten the distance between word and deed to near zero. Tell someone you will send it tonight, and send it before the conversation ends. Tell yourself you will rise at a certain hour, and rise before the alarm. Each kept micro-promise rewires your temporal expectation. The future stops being a fog of someday and becomes a corridor of appointments you trust yourself to keep. Trust is coherence applied through time. Observe your environment as an amplifier. Mess is a frequency. Order is a frequency. You don't clean for moral points. You clean to reduce stochastic resonance. The fewer random cues your eyes process, the more wattage is available for intention. Place one object in your field of view that symbolizes the future you are choosing, and remove 3 objects that belong to the past you are leaving. The ratio teaches your nervous system which epoch it serves. Finally, you perform the eclipse drill. Lights low, phone away. Sit where your spine feels like a pillar in the hall of your own making. Recall the code word. Let it resonate without sound in the back of the throat. Inhale through the nose on 4, pause on 4, release on 8, until your chest stops negotiating for control. When the still point arrives, the quiet that is not empty but dense, ask one question only. What is the smallest action that proves I have already crossed? Accept the first answer. The field speaks in first answers. The second is the defense attorney. Move on the first before your mind writes a counter-brief. You are building a machine of inevitability, not because fate is rigid, but because you are done bargaining with noise. The eclipse is not a spectacle, it is an algorithmic lesson in leverage. A brief removal of light reveals the scaffolding your days. Hang on, you are rebolting that scaffolding to truth. When the light returns, you will not be the same structure catching it. You will be the new basin, the new mass, the new gravity, and reality will obey. You are ready to face the ledger, the austere account book the field keeps on your behalf. It does not judge, it tallies, inputs, outputs, leakages, returns. Every promise you completed is a credit to coherence. Every avoidance is a quiet debt accruing interest in the dark. The eclipse does not punish you with this book. It simply turns the light, so the ink is visible. What you do next determines whether the entries become prophecy or compost. Begin with energy economics. Systems move toward lower free energy states by reorganizing their parts into more efficient configurations. In you, this looks like ending negotiations with behaviors that create constant entropy, the almost that never resolves, the conversations that circle instead of land, the identity you perform to secure approval you no longer need. You have been subsidizing waste with spiritual vocabulary. Call it what it is. Drag. Drag steals thrust. You reduce drag not by speed, but by shape. Streamline your days to the narrow profile of what is undeniably yours to do. Identity will protest. It will say you are reliable for others, and that leaving a role is betrayal. Listen gently, and then remember, you are not a role, you are a vector. Vectors are defined by magnitude and direction. If you lower your magnitude to maintain an angle that no longer points to truth, you betray both. Adjust the angle, increase the magnitude. People attached to the older version of you will call this arrogance. It is accuracy. Coherence can feel like audacity to those who benefit from your uncertainty. This is where you use ritual as engineering rather than theater. Design a boundary ritual that marks the end of the outdated contract. Write the old promise on paper. Speak, in a voice that does not tremble, the clause you are nullifying. Burn, shred, or salt it. Replace it with a simple declaration written in present tense, the new operating condition. Place it where your eyes will collide with it at unchosen hours by the door, above the sink, in the pocket that always finds your hand. Repetition is not magic, it is myelination. Nerves sheath around patterns that are honored, and the pattern becomes cheap to run. Make the right one cheap. Now turn to precision in selection. You were taught to fear missing out. The wiser terror is dilution. Every option you hold open exerts a small gravitational tug on attention. Enough open loops and your orbit decays. Collapse possibility like a wave function. Choose, not forever. For this cycle, choice is not a lifetime prison. It is a corridor long enough to reach mastery. Mastery does not arrive with trumpets. It reveals itself the day you notice a task that used to cost you voltage now runs on a whisper of current. That margin is capacity. You reinvest it. Your nervous system will try to bargain by offering counterfeit urgency. Watch it stampede toward low-stakes tasks that deliver the sugar of completion without moving the axis. Replace the adrenaline economy with a dignity economy. In a dignity economy, the actions that earn respect from your future self take precedence even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching. Privacy is where prophecy matures. What you practice in secret becomes the architecture the world eventually calls inevitable. You will encounter the temptation to over-explain, resist. Explanations are often camouflage for doubt. When coherence is real, you simply move, and the movement reveals the explanation to anyone capable of seeing. Others will ask for a slide deck describing your soul's calculus. Decline the meeting. Offer them outcomes, not minutes. If pressed, give them a sentence that fits in a single breath. This is the line I am responsible for drawing. Then draw it. The field respects boundaries that are drawn without malice because they reduce noise and allow more elegant arrangements to form. Map your allies. Not everyone deserves to stand in the upgraded signal. The metric is not agreement, it is resonance. Some will disagree and still strengthen you because their questions refine your precision. Others will agree loudly and still weaken you because their agreement is a request to remain small together. You differentiate by sensation. After leaving them, do you feel more voltage or less? Keep the ones who elevate your electrical baseline. Release the ones who flatten it. You are not abandoning them. You are refusing to recruit them into a pattern that injures both of you. Attend to the body's prophecy again. There is a place between your navel and your spine where truth presses before words arrive. When you are about to misalign, it caves inward like empty metal. When you are about to align, it warms as if a small sun has been installed. Train yourself to check that region the way a pilot checks altitude. If it dims, pause. If it brightens, proceed even if your mind produces a parade of sophisticated objections. Sophistication is irrelevant if it roots you back to the loop. You will feel the ledger shift as you act. Entries that once read owed will reconcile to paid. This is not a metaphor. It is a nervous system event. Shoulders release millimeters you didn't know were captured. Jaw unhooks. The tongue, that sentinel of unsaid truths, rests against the palate without tension. Sleep deepens because the body trusts you to finish what you start. Trust is not a feeling you generate. It is a reputation you earn with yourself. With enough earned trust, future time bends in your direction. Delays that used to snag you slide off. The world is not suddenly easy. It is congruent. As the eclipse approaches its maximum, you understand the secret people hide from themselves. Reorganization is not about becoming someone else. It is about ceasing to host behaviors that impersonate you. The person you call your future self is not in the future. It is the you who appears when interference drops below a threshold. You are lowering the interference. One cut, one closure, one kept word at a time. When the light returns, you will not rush to perform relief. You will stand still and let the new topology of your life settle, like a map recalculating after a long detour. Roads that used to be primary will gray. A route you've ignored will thicken to gold. You will not ask for a sign. You will take the first deliberate step onto it and feel, unmistakably, the gravity answer. You can feel the new topology settling, a quiet architecture adjusting its angles around your decision to stop negotiating with noise. Now the field offers you a single mercy disguised as a demand. Find the thread and pull. Not all threads won. The psyche hoards spools of half-finished narratives because it fears vacancy more than it fears pain. Vacancy, however, is where the real pattern appears. So you search, not with frantic eyes but with calibrated presence, for the strand that, if tugged, reorganizes more than itself. The thread is usually hiding in plain ritual, the first action you reach for after waking, the last thought you hold before sleep, the recurring scene your mind replays when it is untended. Trace those grooves with forensic patience. You are looking for the lever with the longest radius, an ordinary hinge bearing extraordinary weight. Often it is not glamorous. It might be the sincere 30 minutes of unbroken creation you always postpone until after you satisfy lesser appetites. It might be the daily call you never make because it would end a comfortable ambiguity. It might be the way you feed your body in the first 2 hours of the day, choosing fog or clarity with utensils. Once identified, you offer it a vow instead of an affirmation. Vows are not slogans. They are contracts written in the currency of behavior. Speak it without performance. This action is the line that holds the fabric. Then you prove it before the hour changes. You do not ask the muse's permission. You do not wait for mood. Mood is weather. Vow is climate. The field respects climates because they make logistics simple. As you pull, expect the counterforce homeostasis wearing your face. Systems resist change, not because change is wrong, but because stability is energy cheap. You increase the system's intelligence by teaching it a new cheap pattern. The first nights will cost more voltage. You pay gladly. Coherence is a purchase. And this is the price: temporary inefficiency for permanent elegance. To keep the purchase clean, you must understand friction. There is noble friction, and there is counterfeit friction. Noble friction arises when you move against an old attractor to establish a new orbit. It feels like heat metabolized into strength. Counterfeit friction arises from poorly designed interfaces. It feels like sand in the gears for no sacred reason. Remove the latter ruthlessly. Pre-stage the tools for your vow. Reduce clicks, steps, decisions. Place the notebook open with the first sentence begun. Lay out the shoes pointing toward the door. Pre-compose the message you will send after you complete the action. This is not coddling. It is minimizing entropy so wattage flows to the exact edge that deserves it. Then, add a feedback loop elegant enough to seduce the nervous system, not the brittle perfectionism of never miss a day, the resilient rhythm of never miss two. If one day fractures, the second day becomes sacred. This keeps identity from catastrophizing into failure and keeps momentum from decaying into story. The ledger smiles when you do this. Credits accumulate in silence. Bring in the science explicitly so the mystic in you doesn't have to apologize for the engineer. Hebbian learning states that neurons that fire together wire together. You are pairing the vow with a state of dignity, so the circuit inherits the flavor of self-respect. Dopamine, that misunderstood teacher, does not only reward outcomes, it trains your attention toward cues you decide are meaningful. You anchor a cue, an image, a phrase, a syntonic gesture to precede your vow. Over days, the cue will begin secreting anticipation, and anticipation will pull you into action with less drag. You become a cooperative biochemical garden instead of a reluctant battlefield. You also enlist time properly. You treat mornings as the sovereign domain of signal and afternoons as the marketplace of noise. Do the vow before the world can reach you with other people's priorities. If logistics forbid the morning, protect a time bank elsewhere with the ferocity of a border guard. Put it on the calendar with a name that makes trespass feel obscene. Words matter here. Call it thread pull, not maybe work. Language informs posture. Posture informs probability. Attend to attention's micro-textures while performing the vow. You'll notice 3 layers: the surface chatter, thin waves breaking; the mid-depth current, steady narratives trying to recruit you back; and the deep tide, a slow, impersonal movement toward the version of you the field has been rehearsing. Do not fight the surface. Let it spend itself. Do not argue with the current. Starve it by action. Locate the tide by sensation, the sternum softening, the floor of the pelvis widening, the back of the neck lengthening, as if a hand were gently drawing you into alignment. When you feel the tide, you are no longer rowing alone. The ocean rows with you. A subtle arrogance may try to sprout here, the belief that because the pattern is moving, you are now exempt from humility. Correct it early. Precision without humility curdles into brittle certainty, and brittle certainty shatters under surprise. Humility, in this context, is not self-discount. It is continuous measurement. You keep asking, is the thread still the thread? If yes, pull. If not, release without drama and choose the next with the same calm intensity. Loyalty belongs to coherence, not to methods. Remember the ecosystem around your vow. Environments either conspire with your future or they conspire with your past. Rearrange a room to reflect the new basin. Remove the chair that invites collapse. Elevate the object that signals ascent. Light one candle, not as decoration but as metronome, marking the span of the vow with a visible measure of time transmuted into flame. When the candle dies, you stop. Capacity grows at boundaries, not in boundless sprawl. You are not chasing transformation. You are becoming a person who is not interruptible by low-grade chaos. This is the rarest social currency and the clearest spiritual signature. Others will feel it before they can name it. They will either attune or fall away. Do not grip. Let the relational field reorganize under the signal of your steadiness. Connection that requires self-betrayal is not connection. It is hostage, taking with pleasant lighting. The eclipse edges toward totality in your interior sky. Shadows lengthen not to intimidate, but to reveal the relief lines of a map you once only guessed at. The thread is in your hand, warm from the friction of honest effort. You do not yank, you do not hesitate. You apply steady pressure with the gravity of someone who understands that destiny is simply the name given to patterns executed without apology. The weave gives, fibers realign. Somewhere ahead, a door unlatches without sound. You have pulled long enough for the fabric to admit your seriousness. The weave slackens, then reknits around the shape of your vow. This is the hinge where intention stops auditioning and begins governing. Hinges look small until they move a door the weight of a life. Yours is moving now. Feel the air pressure change as possibility on the other side equalizes with what you called real. You are not passing into a fantasy, you are exiting an agreement. Agreements are the quiet physics of identity. You sign them with repetition, not ink. Some were inherited while you were too young to read the clauses. Others you negotiated in moments of exhaustion because compromise looked like mercy. The field does not punish you for these signatures. It simply enforces them until you replace them. Replacing is not a speech. It is a pattern run at a higher fidelity until the old clause is starved of evidence. The eclipse is the court date. You are the counsel. Present the new evidence. Days stacked without excuse. Language tightened. Posture that refuses collapse. Courts respect evidence. To cross cleanly, you must understand thresholds. Systems resist in proportion to their inertia, and the last centimeters feel heavier than the first miles. This is not sabotage, it is conservation. The psyche saves energy by staying known. Your task is to teach it that the unknown costs less than the loop. You do this by granting the body repeatable proof of safety, while it does unfamiliar things. Safety is not the absence of risk, it is presence inside risk. A breath that completes its arc, a jaw that refuses to clamp under scrutiny, a gaze that rests instead of scans. These are the talismans that matter. Bring mathematics into the temple so your devotion has a ruler. Define your hinge rate, the minimum daily behavior that guarantees the door continues swinging. 1 page, not a chapter. 1 call, not a campaign. 15 minutes of signal work, not a weekend stolen from fatigue. The mind derides smallness because drama impersonates significance. Physics disagrees. Torque equals force times distance. A modest force applied consistently at the right distance rotates masses. Grand speeches cannot budge. You are done auditioning for an audience that confuses intensity with inevitability. You choose inevitability. As the hinge turns, the environment tests you with mirror events. An invitation that flatters your past appears 30 minutes after you anchor a commitment to your future. A person who could have saved you years appears the moment you stop performing helplessness. The test is not moral. It is a measurement of resonance. Does the invitation strengthen the signal or siphon it? Does the person meet the version of you that is arriving or the version they miss? Answer: without romance. Romance is the drug of loops. You will witness anomalies, small impossibilities that feel like the world mispronouncing itself in your direction. The email returns from an address long dormant. A bill you dreaded dissolves under a clerical angel. A stranger articulates your private line back to you with eerie accuracy. Do not capitulate to superstition. These are not gifts from a fickle deity. They are the logistics of a reorganizing field responding to reduced noise. Treat anomalies as checkpoints, not altars. Nod. Continue. If you kneel, you slow. Stay ruthless in the gentle ways. Eat for conductivity, not comfort. Walk as if gravity has decided to collaborate. Tidy the square meter you inhabit, instead of fantasizing about continents. Sovereignty begins inside arm's reach. You are teaching your nervous system a new monarchy, the reign of coherent choices over wandering appetite. There is joy here, but it is sober. The sugar high of early transformation has metabolized into the warm starch of reliability. People will feel safer around you because you are no longer broadcasting random weather. Weather still comes, but your climate holds. A deeper honesty arrives, the kind that doesn't perform contrition or parade transparency. You stop confessing to buy absolution because there is nothing to purchase. You are paying in action. You rarely explain now, not because you are hiding, but because clean movement explains itself. You use language for 3 purposes only: to bless what is aligned, to end what is not, and to invite what is ready. Anything else is leakage. Leakage is boredom disguised as intimacy. You plug it with quiet. There is grief that still wants a voice. Let it speak in ritual, not in sabotage. Light the candle you appointed as your metronome and give grief a fixed container, 10 minutes to say what it feared you would never hear. Then, extinguish the flame and close the session with the phrase that has become your hinge command. You are not trivializing sorrow, you are protecting governance. Governance without tenderness becomes tyranny. Tenderness without governance becomes drift. You are building a state. Your future self stops being a motivational poster and becomes a person with opinions in your ear, not a fantasy projection, an emergent composite of your kept evidence. It speaks less in adjectives and more in protocols. Stand, breathe, choose, close, send. You obey, because obedience to truth is not submission, it is relief. The body loves relief. It is tired of contortions that made other people comfortable. Comfort is not the metric anymore. Congruence is. Congruence glows. There will be a day so ordinary you almost miss it when you realize you haven't looked for a sign in weeks. The signal is seated in you. You walk into rooms and the conversations bend microscopically toward coherence without you campaigning. This is not charisma. It is a field effect. Other nervous systems entrain to steady oscillators. You become a steady oscillator. Antennas tune, noise lowers. Decisions that used to steal days now resolve in a minute because the answer was never complex. You were. Complexity was how you avoided the hinge. The door is almost through its arc. Resist the final sentimental pause where you want to look back and narrate the bravery to yourself. Vanity is an undertow. You owe yourself no myth-making. You owe yourself the next exact action aligned with the vow that proved itself truer than your fear. Cross without ceremony. Ceremony will catch up later, woven into the way light falls differently across the life that meets you on the other side. You are on the far side of the hinge, and the world has not detonated in fireworks. Good. Spectacle seduces amateurs. Dominion arrives like a barometer, reading subtle, steady, undeniable to anyone who watches pressure. You notice it in the smallest exchanges. The email you no longer answer because its tone requires you to borrow anxiety. The chair you refuse because it collapses your diaphragm. The way your hand hovers over a door handle an extra second until the breath completes and the body enters first, mind second, governance at the atomic scale. This is how empires are founded, grain by grain, not trumpet by trumpet. Your attention has texture now. It no longer spreads like syrup across the surface of a day. It drills, bores, anchors. The field recognizes the difference and routes resources accordingly. This is not favoritism, it is physics. Systems feed nodes that convert input to order with minimal loss. You are becoming a low-loss node. The proof is in how little you need to say to move reality. A sentence where there used to be a speech, a gesture where there used to be a negotiation, stillness where there used to be theater. Theater leaks voltage, stillness banks it. With dominion comes a new hazard, the sweetness of control masquerading as clarity. Clarity serves truth, control serves fear. They dress alike, you differentiate by outcome. When you are clearest, other beings around you gain more agency, not less. Their nervous systems lengthen, their shoulders drop, their voices lower into honesty. When you are merely controlling, the room tightens, the humor thins, silence becomes brittle. Govern yourself with this metric. If your signal compresses others into obedience, it is counterfeit. If it expands others into accuracy, it is real. Choose expansion. It costs you your addiction to being right. It buys you reality's trust. The prophetic bandwidth widens. You begin predicting not events, but inflection points, those quiet junctures where a choice looks minor and is not. You feel them in the throat like a pivot waiting for pressure. You ask fewer why questions and more where and when. Where does the lever live? When does the leverage peak? You miss less because you are not dazzled by noise. You see the person in front of you trying to smuggle an old contract into a new conversation and, with one calm sentence, refuse the smuggling. I'm willing to help, not to make it painless. Truth without anesthesia, respectful, precise, liberating. You refine your economy of effort. Not everything merits your full wattage. Full wattage is a sacrament. It belongs to what multiplies. You develop 3 settings: ambient, the dignified minimum that keeps the field coherent; focused, the deliberate application that advances mission; and consecrated, the rare burn that redefines scope. Most of your life runs on ambient and focused. Reserve consecrated for thresholds, for the call that must be made, the document that shifts a decade, the training that forges a new nervous system. If you burn on trivia, you teach the field you cannot be trusted with fuel. The body becomes a compass with multiple needles. You recognize the signature of lies as a slight numbness in the lips, of envy as a receding warmth in the chest, of right-timed action as a slow brightening behind the eyes, of wrong-timed action as buzz without depth. You don't moralize these sensations, you measure them. Measurement replaces melodrama with mathematics. It strips you of the old religion of suffering as meaning. Suffering can be instruction, but it is a crude teacher. Elegance teaches better. You are apprenticing to elegance. Work changes character. You stop solving problems created by your refusal to choose. With the refusal gone, categories collapse. Many issues evaporate because they were smoke from a single unclosed vow. What remains are worthy complexities, designing systems that outlast your presence, crafting language that carries weight without war, building rituals that other people can inhabit without needing your charisma to animate them. Charisma was the crutch. Structure is the throne. You sit in structure so that many may sit under shade. You won't have to keep fanning with personal effort. The relational field reorganizes more visibly. People once addicted to the drama you metabolize drift toward other altars. Bless the drift. Their departure is not your failure. It is the ecosystem conserving coherence. Allies who were quiet peripheral lights glow brighter and step closer. Some carry keys you didn't know you needed, competence you can trust. Skepticism that sharpens your edges without dulling your heart. Reverence that doesn't worship you. Reverence misdirected to a person calcifies into cult. You refuse it with humor. You redirect reverence to the pattern that holds all of you. The pattern is the sovereign here, not your personality. You normalize prophecy into planning. You take the image that arrives in stillness 3 moves ahead, 7 weeks out, and translate it into logistics today. A calendar entry is a prophecy nailed to time. A budget line is a prophecy given bread and shoes. A team standard is a prophecy that survived committee without losing its spine. You guard against 2 errors: mysticism that refuses planning, and planning that refuses mystery. You braid them. You keep 1 chair empty in every important meeting for the possibility you didn't foresee, and 1 page blank in every strategy document for the emergence you will honor when it arrives. There is a temptation to narrate yourself as a savior now that results compound. Decline the costume. Saviors drain, stewards sustain. Stewardship is less glamorous and more fertile. It trains you to ask, what arrangement would remain coherent if I vanished for a season? Then you build that arrangement. You document, you delegate, you design redundancies, you codify thresholds. The ego sulks because admiration thins when orchestration is smooth. Let it sulk. You did not come to harvest admiration, you came to harvest inevitability. Revisit your vow with the eyes of a sovereign. Is it still the lever with the longest radius? If so, deepen it. If not, graduate it without sentiment. Sovereigns evolve their laws as their nations mature. Update your minimums upward by an inch, not a mile. Inches compound, miles collapse. When you feel the old compulsion to stage a revolution every fortnight, smile at the part of you still addicted to adrenaline. Offer it a harder discipline, excellence without spectacle. You begin to enjoy the old pleasures again, but they have new taste. Food becomes voltage, not anesthesia. Music becomes architecture for state, not background noise. Silence becomes a partner you didn't know you were missing. You look at the night sky and you do not ask for a miracle. You thank the apparatus that manufactured your current capacity, all the small, patient, unfilmed choices that no algorithm will ever celebrate. Algorithms reward novelty, the field rewards fidelity. Fidelity is slow gold. As the eclipse's tail passes, a new kind of light returns. It is not brighter, it is cleaner. Edges sharpen, colors simplify. You understand that reality reorganizes itself was never a threat. It was a promise contingent on your refusal to scatter. You kept the refusal. The weave holds. The door stands open behind you without the need to check if it will slam. It won't. Hinges don't betray the doors they've already learned to carry. You walk forward with the gait of someone who knows. What follows is not luck. It is law answering a signal it can finally hear. You are entering the cycle where what you cast begins to arc back with a fidelity that startles you. This is not karmic bookkeeping in a moral register. It is wave mechanics. Signals propagate, meet boundaries, and return as echoes shaped by the surfaces they touched. You are shaping the surfaces now. You are no longer porous in the places that once absorbed your voltage without returning anything but fatigue. You have made your life reflective to coherence and absorbent to instruction. The law of return is therefore not mystical repayment, it is geometry. Begin with the geometry of attention. You have learned that what you stare at with fear recruits narratives to justify its enlargement. Now you stare with inquiry, and inquiry recruits data instead of drama. Data is the compassionate truth numbers that don't care how you feel, patterns that refuse to flatter your biases. You court this ruthlessness because it frees you from the soft prison of self-story. When outcome and story disagree, you side with outcome, adjust the story, and move. The ego cries betrayal, the body sighs relief. Relief is the more honest God. You formalize feedback. Prophecy that cannot be tested decays into performance. You build small experiments that return quickly. A divided by B your sentences. Prototype your rituals. Pilot your offers to 10 before you promise it to 1,000. You are not hedging, you are listening. Listening at scale becomes leadership. You stop pretending to know what a market of nervous systems will do, and you start measuring what they actually do. Patterns emerge, not because you are lucky, but because you are attentive. Attention, when disciplined, looks like foresight to the undisciplined. You refine reciprocity in relationships, not as a ledger of favors, but as an ecology of voltage. You pay first where the ground is fertile, not where guilt is loud. You stop tithing to dysfunction because it calls itself family or history. History is often a lobbyist for entropy. You respect it. You do not obey it. The new covenant is clean. I will invest where mutual coherence multiplies, and I will bless from a distance where it does not. Blessing from a distance is not coldness, it is stewardship of heat. Your language matures from spells to standards. Spells persuade a moment, standards reformat a culture. You write standards for yourself, and others can choose to live under them or not. The standards are simple, almost plain. Respond within this window. Speak to the person present, not the fantasy you've projected. Close loops you open. Name misalignment in one breath, not 20. These standards are not fences to trap. They are trellises for growth. Vines either climb them or they don't. You stop coaxing ivy to love the sunlight. You plant what reaches. Money clarifies. You stop laundering self-worth through price and start using price as a signal about promise and scope. Undercharge and you starve the work. Overcharge and you inflate it into a spectacle of scarcity. You tune price to the weight of transformation delivered and the integrity of delivery. Payment becomes a ritual of alignment, a clean exchange that compresses gratitude into numbers so the work can remain devotion, not debt. You pay others cleanly and on time because you refuse to teach delay to the field through your accounts. Accounts are spells, quiet ones, binding ones. You expand your sense of scale without surrendering intimacy to abstraction. Scale is not bigger audiences, it is thicker trust at increasing degrees of separation. You design processes that keep the grain of your care visible even when the recipient never meets you. A welcome sequence that feels like a human hand. A support policy that refuses to make emergencies out of poor planning while still making room for true chaos. Systems become the way your soul shakes hands with strangers while you sleep. Sleep, for once, is not when your life unravels. It is when your work ripens. Health returns, not as a project but as a byproduct. You are no longer running a black market economy of stimulants to compensate for incoherent days. The body recognizes governance and relaxes into repair. Inflammation recedes where resentment once burned. Your face stops negotiating for approval and begins reflecting rest. You feed for clarity, move for conductivity, rest for memory consolidation. Memory matters because you are no longer trying to forget who you were. You are storing proof of who you are. Proof makes confidence ethical. You confront the last masquerade, the part of you that uses humility as camouflage for fear. It calls itself grounded and realistic, but its realism is a curated museum of prior disappointments. You escort it gently to the edge of your new coastline and let it see that the sea did not swallow you. Then you assign it a useful post-risk assessment with a mandate to offer options, not vetoes. When it protests, you thank it and walk past. Leadership is not decapitating the committee. It is chairing it without abdication. The field answers with invitations that fit like keys. Watch how they arrive. Brief, precise, devoid of flattery, containing clear demands. You accept the ones that require growth without asking you to hemorrhage identity. You decline the ones that offer reach at the price of fog. Fog is expensive. Reach is cheap when you are coherent. It comes as a side effect of usefulness. Usefulness is the throne from which kings of noise cannot dethrone you. You codify grace into the engine. Grace is not exemption from consequence. It is spaciousness for learning. When you miss your mark, and you will, you do not catastrophize. You repair in public when appropriate, in private when it serves, and you re-enter the vow cleanly. Missing twice is the only sin your system recognizes. Even that word sin is retired. You call it drift. Drift is corrected by headings, not shame. Shame steals wattage. Headings allocate it. You become dangerous to the parts of the world invested in confusion. Dangerous not because you attack, but because your existence proves that clarity is possible without cruelty and power is possible without theater. People hungry for that combination find you. People allergic to it try to convert you. You will not convert. You don't need converts. You cultivate practitioners, beings who, upon touching the pattern in you, discover the pattern in themselves and then multiply it without your supervision. Multiplication is the evidence of true return. What you asked of the eclipse has been granted in the only way that matters. Conditions have been arranged for the emergence of your fidelity. You are no longer waiting for a sky event to validate a ground choice. The sky will keep doing what skies do. You, meanwhile, have become weatherproof. The light that returns is not the light you begged for. It is the light you can carry without dropping. Carry it. Keep your step unhurried, your word uninflated, your gaze unpanicked. The architecture of return is live, and the corridors it opens do not end, only widen, curve, and invite. You have entered the corridor where the world begins answering your frequency with equations instead of anecdotes. The eclipse has passed overhead in the outer sky, but its lesson has nested in your marrow. You can feel a pressure equalize across the membranes of your life. The gradient that once leaked your voltage now holds. This is the moment when small inputs stop behaving politely. The system has crossed criticality. Feedback loops that used to stall begin feeding forward. It feels like moving the same lever you've always moved and watching a different planet tilt. Understand what is happening without superstition. Complex systems reorganize around order parameters, subtle variables whose stabilization pulls the rest into shape. In you, the order parameter is coherence, not mood or luck. You stabilized it through kept vows, accurate speech, clean boundaries, and the discipline of not answering noise. As coherence holds, couplings strengthen. Breath entrains posture, posture entrains effect, effect entrains action, action entrains environment, environment entrains opportunity. The loops close and then accelerate. Acceleration looks like grace to outsiders. To you, it looks like math. Because you are no longer hemorrhaging wattage, probability can afford to be generous. Invitations arrive that would have once shattered your nervous system. Now they sharpen it. You evaluate them with the same austere tenderness that has become your signature. Does this invite demand more truth or more performance? Will it multiply the vow or cannibalize it? If it stretches you into breadth while thinning your depth, you decline without apology. Breadth without depth is a stage. Depth without breadth is a cave. You are building a cathedral height from depth, breadth from height, light arranged by structure. You will notice the emergence of what older traditions called providence and what physics calls constructive interference. Signals from independent sources begin arriving in phase. A mentor calls the hour your doubt peaks. A resource drops precisely when the constraint would have forced a compromise. A sentence you wrote months ago becomes the exact phrase that unlocks a closed room. Do not mistake this for a universe obsessed with your biography. It is a universe obsessed with symmetry. You are symmetrical enough now to be useful to it, so it routes symmetry through you. At the same time, stalled patterns make a last grab. Old contracts, smelling their extinction, send emissaries wearing the faces you once loved. They will offer comfort where you have chosen clarity, nostalgia where you have chosen novelty's discipline. They will say, "You've changed," as if that were an accusation. You will agree. Then you will ask the only relevant question, does this change strengthen the thread? If yes, proceed. If not, release. Release with blessing, not contempt. Contempt ties cords. Blessing dissolves them. Bring the science closer. What you are living is a phase transition with memory. The former state hasn't evaporated. It is still available, calling softly from your muscle memory, but your baseline has shifted. To ensure irreversibility, you establish hysteresis, a gap between what could drag you back and what can't reach you anymore. Hysteresis, here, is ritualized minimums that cannot be negotiated under stress. The morning vow before external input, the weekly audit of tolerances, the monthly closure of lingering promises. These are not moral rules, they are physical rails. Rails keep trains from mistaking cliffs for options. Identity updates propagate slowly, then all at once. People who meet you now will never know the labor it took to make your state your default. They will assume ease where you manufactured inevitability. Let them. You are done narrating effort as validation. You choose results that relieve suffering, including your own. Relief is not laziness. It is a clean signal that your design and reality are on speaking terms. You will sense an interior referendum, seeking your consent to expand. Expansion has a biological cost. New dendrites, new myelin, new coordination between regions that once specialized in sabotage. Feed the cost. Eat like an instrument, sleep like a strategy, move like a message. You are not carving marble, you are training conductivity. Conductivity lets more future pass through you without burning your circuits. This is the hour to choose a public standard, something visible enough that your community can read your signal without needing a decoder. Publish the policy that ends ambiguity. Ship the work that has been waiting on the other side of your hinge. Teach the protocol you bled to learn, but teach it without debt collecting. The field is clean. Keep the teaching clean. Do not found a dependency cult around your competence. Design your contribution so that it reproduces without you. Reproduction is the test of truth. If only you can do it, it is theater. If many can do it, it is architecture. Expect quiet retaliation from environments invested in confusion. Meetings that once devoured hours will try to reassert themselves. Agendas expand to reabsorb your clarity. Crises appear with the timing of a skilled pickpocket. You neutralize this not by aggression but by standard. Here is how we decide. Here is when we meet. Here is what earns escalation. Standards lower the amplitude of chaos. Low amplitude chaos cannot disrupt a high coherence signal. It simply becomes background. Background is where noise goes to die. You have become a reference point. Nervous systems calibrate against you the way sailors calibrate against a lighthouse they will never meet. Do not romanticize this. Maintain it. Calibration requires that your oscillation remains steady, not perfect. When you wobble, and you will perform repairs in plain sight without spectacle. I missed. I'm correcting. That sentence, lived, is rarer than any sermon. It purchases trust at wholesale. Now you invite one more level of precision, renormalization. As your scale changes, your units must change with it. What counted as a lot of effort at the beginning of this cycle must be re-indexed. Raise minimums in millimeters, lower tolerances in decibels, increase generosity in degrees. Too much, and the system fractures. Too little, and it stagnates. You will feel the right increments as the difference between noble friction and counterfeit friction. Keep noble, cut, counterfeit. The nonlinear return reaches a crest you can ride instead of survive. You no longer ask, will reality reorganize? You ask, where shall I place the next clean edge so it has no option but to do so? You already know the answer. It's the action that still makes your hands a little warm because it exposes you to your own standard. Good. Exposure is the antiseptic of destiny. Take the step. Let the field write its response across the fabric you have tightened, and as it writes, do not rush to interpret. Stand still long enough to read. The final arrangement is approaching, not as a trumpet, but as a pressure change and a light that has your exact name. You arrive at the lip of the arrangement you have been building in secret, and the air tastes different, cleaner, denser, honest. Nothing shouts, nothing begs. The field has finished its quiet calculus and set the pieces in positions that reveal the simplest truth you've avoided because it asked so little and demanded so much. You are responsible for the frequency you keep. The eclipse has come and gone in the sky. Inside you it remains, a permanent lesson etched like a fine groove in a record that will not forget its song. Stand where you are, feet placed like coordinates, shoulders carrying the memory of what they've put down. The old contracts are no longer judges. They are exhibits, artifacts. You can study without re-entering the museum. You do not argue with them. You archive them. When they rattle their glass and plead for relevance, you answer with the only language that ever rewrote your life movement. You take one exact step that proves your allegiance to coherence over nostalgia. The step is small to outsiders. To the field, it is a signature written in current. The world is listening for your standard now, not your opinions, your standard. You name it without theater. What you will steward, what you will refuse, what you will bless, what you will no longer fund with your time, your breath, your gaze. You do not raise your voice to make it true. You lower your noise. Truth conducts best through quiet metal. Attend, for a final moment, to the temple of the body. Gaze level, jaw unlatched, tongue resting. Exhale a fraction longer than the inhale. Feel the sternum soften as if a gate were releasing a hidden courtyard. The code word that followed you through dreams returns, but this time you do not whisper it like a request. You hold it like a lever, and with a subtle pressure, you feel a mechanism engage, a click you used to chase in omens, now arriving as a mechanical certainty inside your bones. The hinge has completed its arc. The door does not slam. It settles. You speak to your future without pleading. I have removed the interference. I have chosen the corridor. I have paid in action. The reply is not thunder. It is logistics. The message arrives when it is supposed to. The person answers on time. The path that held gravel last year has been graded by months of small dignities into something your steps can trust. Trust is the only luxury you ever wanted, and now it is not a purchase. It is an inheritance you funded day by day with kept promises that nobody filmed. When doubt flares, as weather will, you do not convert it into doctrine. You let it move across the climate you've set, and the climate remains. The climate is coherence. Coherence bends probability exactly as advertised. You do not romanticize it anymore. You steward it. Stewardship replaces spectacle, and with it arrives the quiet dominion that never needed trumpets. Rooms that organize around your stillness. Conversations that resolve without your ego litigating them. Work that multiplies without your nerves bleeding to keep it alive. You turn once not to mourn, but to bless. Thank you for what taught me. I release what I cannot carry. Then you face forward and accept the assignment that has been consistent since the first tremor behind your eyes. Remain precise. Remain kind. Remain unbribed by noise. The eclipse, having completed its lesson, leaves you with a simple instrument, breath linked to word linked to act linked to world. You raise the instrument. You play the first clean note. Reality, recognizing its cue, reorganizes itself and answers in tune.